Oh my goodness, my camera got knocked over.
Michael,
There
what
we
is
are.
happening? Are you having
There we go.
an earthquake?
Yeah, not sure why my camera was knocked over. I think I know what happened. I think my cat was laying down behind the monitor and tugged down the
Sound
cable.
is, Michael, I hear you very distorted.
Oh, let's see.
Could it be that your volume too high, perhaps, of your microphone?
Okay, let me see if I can adjust some things.
Yeah, it's like you're
Okay.
over-modulating.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, now I pulled that down a bit. That's not too much. All right, how about that?
That's much better.
Okay,
That's back to normal.
okay.
Has Biscuits been playing with you?
Yes, I
because
believe
the
he has.
because the camera was pointing to the ceiling. The microphone was way too loud. Okay. Good to see you again, Michael.
You too. How have
Yeah,
things been going?
I'm having trouble with a few gotchas here. So I'm nice to wait, let me make my virtual machine a little bit smaller so that I can share it with you. Unless you want to start with something else.
No, no, this is good. I have a small update, but I think this is going to be a lot more interesting. So let's lead with this.
I'm not sure. you will you will probably immediately see what is wrong. Wait, I'm gonna show you. Close all that, then share the virtual machine again. Yeah, that one. Go live. That should be visible right now.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Something. Yeah. Don't worry about that one. We get there later, all these errors.
Okay.
But let's first start with something on the breakpoints. And that's fun. I don't know where it comes from, but sometimes things goes terribly wrong. If we go to debugging, so I'm working with npm link now. I'm having shared list, I'm having Jinaga, and the two are linked with npm link. Okay, that was the setup which I documented.
Yes, makes sense.
I have 3 breakpoints here. So this is in the save, in the query, and in the load. So this is inside the dependency. Yeah, that's the progress store model. If I want to debug here, no problem. I just start debugging, and it will stop here in the query. So that works
Good.
fine. Now, that's the expected behavior. Wait, where is it? Imagine now, for example, I go to where is it here? This route. Oh, no, I'm in the node models here. I go to the local source. So, for example, I take here, let's say routes. That one I'm gonna execute, configure routes. I put a breakpoint there.
Okay. Yeah, this one should be the easy one because this is
Yeah.
your application. Yeah.
It appears here.
Uh-huh.
If I run it now, I say launch here. is it not?
So you've got the breakpoint inside
Yeah,
of the send file,
yeah, no,
or inside of
no,
the
no.
route itself.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, so that one wouldn't get hit until the browser tries to get the home page. But if you move the breakpoint outside of
Let me
that,
get, for example, here,
yeah,
this one
yep,
in the server, he will get that one. That's for sure. So I have server breakpoint here, and I have my 3 others there, and this will still work fine. So the expected behavior is that he first go to the server, indeed. If I press F5 to continue, he will go to the query,
okay,
and so on. But now, I disable the server breakpoint. I just disable it, yeah? It's still there, it's disabled. And now I run, and what do we see? He's not hitting any breakpoint anymore. I have no
I
idea
do
why.
not know.
And I was thinking, why are my breakpoints not working anymore? Until I deleted this one, yeah? Because if I stop it,
Huh?
if this one, I just delete it, so now it's like before,
Yep.
I run again, now it's working. So don't worry about it. You just have to know it
Yeah,
in order not to lose time. Now,
that is a weird one.
the thing is, look, if we go back, to where was it? My server. I put breakpoint back. No, I go to debugging here. Oh, we have
Good
visitor.
morning. How do you do?
Hey there.
Hi. We are going over some stuff in the Jinaga.JS package, the library. This is an implementation of the ideas that are in the historical modeling book. So, have you joined us as a reader of the Art of Immutable Architecture?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was checking out the repos. Just thought might join and see what you guys are up to.
Cool. So, so what? How far have you made it through the book at this point?
I've been through it all.
Oh, cool. Have you been able to put anything into practice yet?
Not yet. That's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Okay.
Any
Well, cool.
ideas? Any ideas for some practical implementation?
Sorry,
project? Any ideas or any projects for some practical?
Well, yeah, potentially there's a solution we're working for. We might be working on for a customer, something similar to CRDTs.
Cool. What's the problem that you're trying to solve with CRDTs?
Multiple edition of a shared project by multiple users.
Right. So yeah, you've got so you've got multiple people that are adding the same thing, conceptually adding the same thing, but in a traditional implementation, you'll end up with duplicates. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so it's very similar to like Git. So every user will work locally and then push the changes. It's not like a Git push, but just saving and make the changes public.
Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't have the multi-stage where you make your change and then you have to add it to the index and then you have to commit it and then you have to push it. So it takes some of those stages away, but it still uses the same underlying ideas.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yep.
Just,
So
just a question to make communication easier. I guess MP is not your first name. MP stands for military police.
I'm Marco.
Mark, okay. So can we just say Mark then?
Marco, yeah.
Marco, okay. So
good to meet you,
that
Marco.
makes communication easier.
Yeah.
Marco, was there anything where Michael can help you with immediately, or?
No, no. If you, I guess you are pairing, right?
We are, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
if you just want to go
Okay.
ahead, I'll try to understand what you guys are doing and maybe ask a couple of questions. I have a meeting to attend to at like 22 minutes, but until that point, I'd just like to see you guys working.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to kind of put you
No problem.
in context, so the library that we're working with, Jinaga.JS, that's a library that I maintain. That's an implementation of the ideas in the book, and we're debugging it through a sample application called Shared List, so that we can so that Jan could get a better understanding of how things are constructed, because he is working on Jinaga.net, the .NET port of the library.
Cool.
But if you have any questions regarding your project and Jinaga, go ahead, because don't don't worry to interrupt. Michael is there to answer questions, and I'm taking 100% of his time. But that doesn't mean that if you have a question, don't worry about it. Go ahead. Good. Let's see. Where were we? Yeah. So if you have this breakpoint in the local, in the main application, then it will stop, and otherwise it will not stop. So I put it there again. I run it. So now I was gonna disable it. That was my purpose. Like this. I run it again. Then I go to the debug console, and then we had this diagnostic command script. Remember, then it will show, and it should show a window. Why is it not?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not familiar with the script command in the debug console.
Let me see. Because that was what I. Yeah. No, it's scripts. That's what I documented.
Oh, right. Okay.
On, yeah. Remember, it's scripts with an S. That one is also doing nothing at all. What is he saying here? Oh, yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I see why. That was the next thing I wanted to show you, but wait.
So it looks like it's trying to do a
no, there is a problem with. Yeah, there is a problem with the database permissions. Let's use our super user like this, and now go back here. That's another thing that you cannot, before you debug, npm run build used to Visual Studio.
Yeah.
It rebuilds automatically. Here
Yeah.
it doesn't. Now somewhere there should be a comment to set it up in that launch program. That's launch.json.
Yeah.
Wait, where were we now? I was gonna debug.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not finding my breakpoints. So I go to my debug console. .scripts, plural. Still not. Because this was working. Okay. So the scripts show you debugging information, and it tells you it was not stopping, it was not finding that breakpoint. So now even the scripts is not working. If I would, it's not running anymore, no. If I put it there.
So you've enabled the breakpoint.
Now I enabled it. Just because I'm curious about that scripts comment. .scripts. You see? Why breakpoints are not working, for example. If I select, and here you will see that all the breakpoints are working correctly. And so when it didn't, one of the items was not green. But okay, I will see whether I can find something about it. But so the main thing to remember is if you set a breakpoint and you disable it, it might not work anymore. The whole you might not stop anymore. You might disable all the breakpoints at once. Then the second thing that is important to run the npm build. And then the third thing I'm having trouble with. So remember last time I didn't have the database connected yet. So now I heard my brain finding out again how it worked. Look back into the documentation, your documentation, my documentation, and it works fine if I'm using the Postgres user. Yeah. So if I just run this, so I do npm start, then I go open my browser, I add something, and you see test, and it adds here. So it's working fine. Now, wait, let me make this one. If we stop the application, I go back to my configure Jinaga. I don't use my super user, but I use my dev user.
Yes. Okay.
Control.
So I think the thing to look at is how you upgraded this database. So I'm imagining this was a version 2 database, and then you upgraded it to version 3 to start testing with Jinaga 3.
No.
Or are you still using Jinaga 2?
What I did was, wait, let me go to here. I deleted the Jinaga database. I deleted the dev user here. I recreated them using the script. I'm running this completely on Windows, not in a Linux subsystem. And it complained that it could not access the tables. So then what I did was I went to the tables here. Right, first was there something here? No, I don't think so. So I went to these tables, Grant Wizard, then I selected all of them. I did next, a plus, I took here my dev user, I added insert and select. I did finish on next, so all this, I say okay. And then I thought it should be working now.
Right. There's a little bit more. If you take a look in the Jinaga project, you'll see right next to setup SQL there's a setup.sh. Of course, you can't run a shell script on Windows, but you can still see the thing that's missing. Oh, I'm expecting.
Jinaga itself, huh?
Oh yeah, not shared list. It's in Jinaga. Yeah, so setup sh.
This one then.
Yes. So so if you run the shell script in order to set up the database, you can see it creates the user, runs the setup SQL, and then it does all of the grants.
All the grants.
Yeah, so that's what you did manually, except you didn't have the grants on the sequences.
And what are these sequences?
Those are the objects that generate the incrementing IDs.
Okay, yeah. These sequences are in fact a kind of stored procedure then.
It's it's particular to Postgres. Postgres doesn't like kind of bake that into the table. Like in SQL Server, if you do an insert and you don't use the primary key, then SQL Server will generate an ID and put it in the primary key. But in Postgres, you have a separate object altogether called a sequence that is really just a stored procedure kind of with some state, and that state is it kind of pierces the transaction boundary. So if everybody's trying to create a new ID all at the same time, they're going to get different IDs. And then, if you roll back the transaction, sorry, that ID is lost. Next time you go after one, you'll get another one. And it used to be that you had to use the sequence to get your ID and then do the insert. Postgres has now made it possible to hook a sequence up to a table, but it's still a separate database object that you have to manage.
Yeah. And these sequences, that's new in version 3 of Jinaga, or not?
There were, yeah, that's right. These are new because the version 2 database was designed without any auto-incrementing IDs. So all of the foreign keys were based on a hash.
Yeah. Okay, that's where I got bitten. Because I thought it is not possible. The documentation I made from last time, the setup of the database, didn't mention it.
Yeah.
Also the website doesn't mention that. But even then, the select and the insert, that was necessary before.
Yes. So before it did select and insert on all of the tables, and before there were only 4 tables. So you might be granting more permissions than are necessary. I deliberately didn't give the Jinaga user, the app user, update or delete.
Yeah, because actually, if we go and look in the documentation on Jinaga.com, connect to the Postgres database.
I probably haven't updated that.
Yeah, so there, unless the user will be granted limited permissions to the database, it will only be able to select and insert. Yeah, to run the setup script.
Yeah, it still has the psql command rather than saying to use the shell script.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have the grant statements in the documentation.
No. And it's funny because I I must have tried it one time because I documented it in a separate document, the steps that I made. But they are very similar to what you have. But I didn't assign select and insert. But I do remember it from one of your videos where you showed it. But okay.
Yep. Yep. And I think the only place where it actually shows up in documentation is in a comment, or it used to be in a comment in the shell or in the SQL script.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that definitely needs to be updated.
But so actually, Michael, the grant, we can also do that in this script, in SQL setup. Because you commented this once. If you uncomment them, they will create the user.
Yeah. So that's assuming that your user is going to be called dev, which kind of makes sense for development, but maybe you want a different user for runtime. So, you know what I think would make sense is for the script to create a database role and grant all of the privileges to that role, and then the instructions will be create your own user and assign it to that role.
Yeah, and perhaps create the correct role, then make a demo user as a second script, and a third script set up the database. Because in that way, it's easy for people to use the system to try.
Yeah.
That would, and if they want to use it in production, then they just create the role. They don't use the demo user. They create their own user with own password, and they run the database creation script.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing that I do in order to make it easier to try things out is the
Docker.
The Docker image.
Yeah.
So
the Docker image doesn't run on a virtual machine.
No, I guess it wouldn't. Wow. Yeah.
So, no, I tried it a long time ago on a virtual machine and it didn't work. Or not automatically. Perhaps there is a way to make it working. And this testing is still on a virtual machine, so I just set it up manually directly on Windows.
You need to turn on nested virtualization.
You need to turn on what?
Nested virtualization.
Okay, and then it should work. Because I remember for what was it, WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux. I think the first version you also needed nested virtualization. Wasn't that?
Yeah, I think you still need it.
Okay. I'm gonna try that and see whether that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do appreciate also making sure that the script is correct, because when you deploy it to production, this might be the way that you decide to do it.
Yeah. I will, if it's okay for you, I will update that script and split it then in the 3 parts and make a pull request.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
And then about the breakpoints, I will document it on that page that I made on GitHub.
Okay.
These are all small things, but it's I can imagine that somebody who starts with it. I've seen you doing it so many times.
Oh yeah.
and I still know where I should be, where I should be going, and it bites me every time. But I think for somebody who starts that, it's difficult. Okay, so that's where I got this week. Not far, but in the good direction.
All right. Well, so I did make just a tiny little bit of progress.
This, yeah.
So we do a. All right. So what's okay, yeah, this was just me looking at that shell script. So what I've been observing with the Improving You application. So yeah, we've got a an application that we run at work that is based on Jinaga.JS, and we've been running it for 5 years. So it's got 5 years worth of data in there, and so it's basically using my friends as guinea pigs. So one of the things I observed when switching to Jinaga 3 is that there was some latency on writes. And so whenever you you insert a new fact, you have to insert into the fact table. That's going to give you back the IDs that were just inserted, and kind of line those IDs up with the hash of the fact and the fact type ID, so that you can say, oh, okay, that one has this ID, and so the application is pulling that back and putting that into a fact map. Now that it's got those IDs, it can insert into the edge table. So it says fact number 47 has a predecessor of fact number 42 in roll number 13, whatever. So the edge table is just a bunch of foreign keys. And then it does an insert into the ancestors table, which basically does the transitive closure over all the edges. So recursively, every predecessor and then every one of their ancestors as well. So it does all three of those inserts, and because the code is currently written to take these fact IDs and then do the translation into fact IDs in order to create the edges and to create the ancestors, these are done as 3 separate calls to the database. So when I switch to managed Postgres, and there's extra latency for each call, then an insert of facts takes close to a second to do all of the different steps. And so I'd really like to combine those steps so that we've got less latency. So this is the set of SQL statements that it is currently doing in order to do the insert fact, insert edge, insert ancestor. So we've got the hash, the fact type ID, and then the body of the fact, the fact data itself. So it's doing that insert into public fact, and then returns the fact ID correlated with the type ID and the hash, so that it can build that map. Now, there's some interesting things about that. We'll get back to that in just a second. But then once it's got those IDs, it issues another command, and it says, okay, here's the role that you're in. The successor fact ID is the one that I just inserted, so it came out of this map. The predecessor fact ID is one that I looked up in a previous step. So I took all of the predecessors, got their fact IDs, and now I've got those all in memory. So do those inserts of those edges, and on conflict do nothing. So you'll get a conflict if you have a row that has the same role ID, successor fact ID, and predecessor fact ID. So that combination is an alternate key. In fact, I don't think Edge has a primary key. That doesn't need one. We can take a look real quick and see what the Edge table really looks like. So here is the Edge table. Yep, so we've got role, successor, predecessor, and yeah, so they're all foreign keys, and then we've got an alternate key on all three. And then a couple indexes so that we can search it from different directions. But yeah, so if that edge is already in the database, then that's fine. Keep going. And that should actually never happen because this successor fact ID is an ID that we just got finished inserting. But it's certainly in the spirit of what I'm trying to do. So I kind of like that clause. And then ancestors. For the particular fact ID, so this 3 is that represents the fact ID of what I'm just trying to insert here, and then yeah, here the 1 and the 2 are known predecessors of that that fact. Go ahead and insert those into the ancestor table, and then also insert all of their ancestors as ancestors of fact ID. Oh, that should have been a 3. Fact ID 3. So that's what it's currently generating. So yeah, the idea is try to do this in such a way that you don't have to have these fact IDs in order to generate the subsequent statements. Instead, if you could do the subsequent statements knowing only the hash and fact type ID, then you could generate all that SQL, send it to the server all at once, and it does the inserts into all 3 tables. And that is precisely what I have here in the combined SQL. So now I just do the insert into fact, and I don't do the returning. Instead, I do the on conflict do nothing. So interesting little aside is on conflict do nothing and returning. If you tried to use both of them in the same statement, in Postgres particularly, you get a very strange behavior, which kind of makes sense, but is not really what you want. The behavior is that if there's a conflict and it does nothing with that row, then it also does not return that existing fact type ID or that existing fact ID that it had a conflict with. But what you really want is, here's a set of data, merge it in with what's in there, and then give me back all the IDs. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting aside. So, but
by combining them in one procedure, you can avoid that he doesn't return anything.
Yes, yeah. When I was working on that particular SQL, I was thinking that rather than doing that, and if you look online, you'll see people, how do I do this? How do I return the ID of the conflicting row? And people say, yeah, write your code a different way, or if you really want to do it that way, then you do an insert on conflict do nothing followed by a select in order to get your IDs back. And that select will hit the ones that were just inserted as well as the ones that were already there that conflicted.
Yeah.
And so I almost wrote the code in version 3 to do that in 2 separate steps. But then I said, I can do it in 1 step. And if I and so without the onConflict do nothing, if there is a conflict, then it will roll back the transaction, and there's already retry logic that will retry it, and then it'll say, oh, those fact types are already there, and it won't try to insert them, or those facts are already there, it won't try to insert them. So, so it is an edge case, and the edge case is already handled by some error code. It's just I want to be as optimal on those edge cases as well as I can be without violating correctness. So this now becomes a necessary portion of it. I can't just do the returning anymore because I have to keep going, and I want to do the return at the end. Now that I've said that, that might not actually be true. I might be able to do returning on the first one, keep going, but those results are still returned. Don't know. I'll think about that. Think if I want to go back to this. Okay. At any rate, so now you've got the facts in the fact table, and the fact table has an alternate key by the hash and the fact type ID. So we can see that here. Here's the fact table. So its alternate keys by hash and fact type ID. So that's what would cause the conflict if there was one. And it also happens to be that I have the hash and the fact type ID while I'm trying to do all these inserts. And so I can join the hash and the fact type ID that I have when I'm trying to create an edge for the successor and for the predecessor. So, okay, I just tried to, yeah, never mind that this doesn't make too much sense. I tried to insert, I guess it does make sense, yeah. So I just gave you a very small little graph where fact 1 is pointing to fact, or fact 2 is pointing to fact 1. Yeah, 1's the predecessor, 2's the successor. And the role ID that it's using for that reference is 1. And so we take those 2 pairs of hash and fact type ID, as well as the role ID, and then join it to the fact table twice. Once for the successor, once for the predecessor, and then we can pull out the fact IDs from those 2. And again, on conflict, do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, biscuits wants in. Then ancestor is the one that got really interesting. So in this case, I needed to get all of the predecessor IDs, both for inserting them directly and for getting their ancestors to do the recursive part. So I did that as a common table expression so that we only need to express that once. So that's the same set of code as you see up here. So all that should be the same. And so that means that that E, now this common expression, is going to have our successor fact ID and our predecessor fact ID. And so we can insert that directly, and we can join that to the ancestor in order to get its ancestor fact IDs. So that's the plan. That's the combined SQL. Now I just need to go here into Postgres store, and now this function that I just extracted from the big function, I said these are the ones I want to combine, put them together, extract. And now this one, I'm going to generate some SQL, generate some parameters. So these are the parameter placeholders, and then these will be the parameter values themselves. Generate that and execute it.
And in one round trip, you should be able to get the database up to date.
Yep. Exactly.
Great. Great. That's another problem solved then.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that should get us to a point where we have less than a second for saving a fact using the managed Postgres server.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still, I still suspect that it won't be quite fast enough, quite the experience that I want people to have. And so there's some additional steps that I would like to take there. One of the simplest things to do, which is probably the right thing to do, is to turn on the browser persistence. So use
Index.
IndexedDB. So that caches everything that's read from the server, so that it can serve all those queries directly out of the browser. So that makes navigating through the application and seeing data that you've already seen really fast. But then it would also cache any facts that you create inside of IndexedDB and put them into a queue. And then there's a background thread. It's not really a background thread, it's JavaScript that is servicing that queue and trying to send that to the server. But in the meantime, the user's going on with their business. So to them, hitting a button to make a decision, like vote on a course or register for a course, that's still an instant operation. They don't see any latency at all. It's just they would start to see something spinning in the top of the browser, and then within a second it'll go away.
Your browser becomes a mobile application.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great about Jinaga, that you can just have it locally, and that it works. It syncs in the background.
Yep. And that's something that I built, that I demonstrate, but I have never turned that on for the Improving You application because I wanted to see the latency. I wanted to see the performance issues, and that would kind of hide everything. So yeah, I think once I get through this pass and I can improve the latency on save, then I'll go ahead and turn that on and give that a proper test. So yeah, I've tested it myself. I've demonstrated it, but I haven't had a whole bunch of people that I have to support using that feature. Saying, hey, I registered for a course on my laptop, and then when I go to my desktop, I'm not registered. But then on my laptop, I'm still registered, and it's like, what's going on? It's like, oh, your laptop isn't connected to the server anymore. It's just serving local data.
Yeah, but once people are used to it, I think if they use it on a mobile phone, they will easier understand.
Yeah.
With a laptop, you are used to having connection.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the application that we use to keep track of our time and to create invoices for our clients, that is notoriously slow. So you bring it up on your mobile application and you say, okay, I want to enter my timesheet. Spin. Okay, here's your timesheet. All right, I need to enter my hours for today. So So let me select the time code. Spin, 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 spin. All right, here are your time codes. Yeah,
But
here's
that's
the one
something
that I
that
always
works.
use.
Yeah, that's something that works completely over the internet,
Yep.
and it's not making use of Jinaga.
No, it's not.
So that might be the next step.
Yeah,
No,
that's
mm,
something that we buy. That one's called Workday is the name of the
mm,
app. So yeah, people are just kind of used to Workday is so slow. All right, yeah. It
mm.
should be really fast for me to enter my time, and off with my day. But then it's like, all right, I have to stop and I have to wait for this thing. It takes my attention. Um, I don't think that people quite realize how much of their attention is spent on waiting for an API.
Mm.
But I think once this style of application, like the Jinaga style of application, becomes more prevalent, then people might start to see the difference. And it's like, oh, this, at first it'll be, hey, this is really fast, and then it'll be, well, this is the way things should be. That one's really slow. Hey, you should probably speed up your service.
Yeah, but
Well,
I, I think a very important advantage also is the resilience of the application.
yeah.
Because right now, one of my applications who is using the synchronization.
Mm-hmm.
So on the mobile phones, it's synchronization, but the dispatcher console is still directly talking to the database.
Ah, right.
Now that application, that server is not here, is in the cloud.
Uh-huh.
I received a mail from the provider. Oh, next week we are doing an emergency migration.
Oh.
So somewhere during the week, it might be offline for half an hour. Well, the people using the mobile phones, they will not complain. They can
Yeah.
continue to work. It will not sync, but 10 minutes or a half an hour later, it will sync.
Mm-hmm.
But dispatchers, they will call me. So I have to send out a mail. Somewhere during the week, there might be some interruption.
Yeah. And you can't give them a window because you don't have a window.
No, the provider was not able to narrow down. They just told us, be careful, your backups will not be kept. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's not too bad. I don't rely on backups of a provider.
Uh-huh.
Nice to have, but I like my own backups as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but I spoke to you last week about this satellite system.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which by the way, they found the real cause, which was actually hacking. And so conclusion, about 70,000 terminals have been probably the firmware erased. So they have to ship 70,000 terminals back to the provider. I guess they can just reprogram them then. But it's I'm waiting for my new terminal. And so that's my second backup. So the first is the normal internet. Then I have a wireless connection, a 4G, that takes over if the internet fails, and then there is the satellite connection. The normal line, it's always on. So up to the point that I was already thinking of canceling that satellite connection. What happened this week? So the satellite was offline, and this weekend the main internet connection also got out. So, but luckily there was still the 4G connection, which worked perfectly. But that means if you have one backup, it's like nothing. You need a second backup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a weekend, so it was not too bad. But it's a good test to see whether things are working.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think like most commercial systems, you need a redundancy of 3. Military systems, you need a redundancy of 4. I think is kind of the rule of thumb there.
Yeah, tell that to Putin that he needs redundancy. No, but I really like the fact that you have a local database and that you can just sync it, because that means we are more and more used to having connection all the time. But I don't think that in my lifetime we will be able to say, okay, we have a reliable connection all the time. One day it might come. But even then, once Elon Musk is going to Mars, then you need a local database because the latency will be too long.
Yeah, the speed of light actually. Even now, the speed of light is an issue. Just having a conversation, the other side of the world, but not too bad. But yeah. How far away is Mars? 12 light minutes, something like that. At its furthest.
I don't know, but you need Jinaga for that.
Yes.
No, but so even if the whole world is covered with a 100% reliable network all the time, you still will need Jinaga.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember kind of the conversation that was happening online on podcasts while I was originally working on correspondence. During that period of time, smartphones were starting to become much more prevalent, and the conversation was around, should we build our applications to be resilient like this? And probably the most prevalent opinion was, don't worry about that because that's a hard problem, and connectivity is going to catch up soon. So pretty soon you'll be able to get a signal no matter where you are. And I always thought that was a very short-sighted way of thinking about the problem. And here we are, a decade later, and it's not it's not as good as people thought it would be.
It becomes more and more important to have these resilient systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. It's worth to put time in it to build something like this.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, and then I think the kind of the last mile there, the next step that we're kind of working toward, of having a software as a service, kind of a host up there in the cloud. So you just go to Jinaga.com, you say, I'm going to sign up, and then you've got, okay, jan.jinaga.com, that belongs to you, and you can point any of your applications to it. That's once we've got all of the local resiliency patterns really tested and ironed out, and it's JavaScript and it's .NET, and you can build your applications. Then if you do have a server, it'll really be just to serve the application. It won't be to serve the data. The data will be in this host. And that, kind of circling back to where we began, that would be an even simpler option for just trying things out. It's like, okay, let me sign up for a free service and then use that database in the cloud, rather than running my own, setting up a Docker container or deploying it within my own virtual machine.
Okay, that's on another level where people can really focus on their model and work with Jinaga itself.
Yeah.
Right now we are more on the infrastructure side of things, which I like as much as the modeling itself.
Yeah.
No, I find it fascinating to make systems that are resilient.
Yeah, that definitely is fun. I don't think that I'll be able to get away from that anytime soon, and that's probably just going to be my career now for the as I get this system set up, just making sure that it stays running, or at least hiring people that can make sure that it stays running. So yeah, I'll always have some foot in that space. But yeah, honestly, I would like to get to the point where I'm not thinking about the infrastructure and I'm just going out to customers and modeling with them. Run a workshop, come up with a model, put that model into a really high level visualization environment. So here's the model, here's the data. Let's run some queries. Something that's it's kind of like the grandchild of Excel and SharePoint, but good. Well, Excel's great, but SharePoint maybe not so much.
Jinaga is the best.
Yeah.
So let's see where we get with it. But there's still a lot of work to be done before it's that far.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will make a small PR then for that for the setup scripts, and then I hope that I can finally start real programming. Good.
Excellent.
Yeah, 1 minute before the end. That's
yes.
the first time I let you go to work. So next week the same UTC time. Huh?
Same UTC time, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just telling my friends, this is UTC. We're going to stick with this time.
I saw somebody said time is immutable.
Yes, it is.
That would mean we live forever.
Maybe.
Oh, time progresses all the time. Okay, Michael, see you next week.
All right, see you then.
Okay, bye-bye.